Jim, any update from Teresa?
I haven't heard.
There's Tony. So we think we're just waiting for Teresa. So while we are waiting to officially begin the meeting, I just wanted to say if anyone is interested in speaking during public comment, if you can chat in the message your name and where you live, just so we can have that record, and we'll make sure we call out to each of you. And yes, I saw the list shows the people that are here, but we need to record the names in the chat for anyone who wants to speak in public comment, please.
I did just see Teresa show up too.
Okay.
I want to give another couple minutes for public commenter folks.
Yep, absolutely.
I just had someone text me that they're using the link on board meeting on board docs. It wasn't working.
It absolutely is working. If they maybe could give it another shot, make sure that they've copied and pasted the right thing.
Okay.
Because there's like a lot of people in here, so.
I just used that link and it worked.
Me too.
We'll give another 30 seconds, Jim, and then we'll get started. Not that I have a timer in front of me for 30 seconds, so I will imagine what 30 seconds might be.
For the people who've recently logged in, if you would like to speak during the public comment, if you could just write your name and where you live down in the chat so that we can call on you, that would be helpful.
Okay, I would think we can get going. Celeste, we have all board members present. All right, thank you. We will call the meeting to order at 6:33 p.m. and open with a salute to the flag. And I believe we have the flag on the screen for anyone who doesn't have it in their home. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, Celeste, I did note that there was an addition on the personnel.
Yes, there was an addendum added for an individual.
Thank you.
Mhm.
Okay, so we will begin our meeting with privilege of the floor. I am going to just review the public expression at meetings policy for everybody, and then I will go down in order of those which have listed their name on here. I do want to actually, before we open that, acknowledge that the board did receive requests to move this meeting to in-person. Unfortunately, the last minute change we had at the last meeting 2 weeks ago was less than ideal, and we didn't want to go that direction again and make a last minute change. And we are also watching and paying attention to numbers. And while I acknowledge COVID numbers are declining, it is still prudent for us to make the best decisions, especially when we anticipate large gatherings. So we anticipate for the near future, we will probably continue board meetings virtually. Policy 3220, public expression at meetings. All meetings of the Board of Education shall be conducted in public, and the public has the right to attend all such meetings. Public expression at such meetings is encouraged and at the specific portion of the agenda provides members of the public to address the board. This period of the meeting is listed on the agenda as privilege of the floor. The purpose of allowing the public to make statements during the meeting is to allow for additional views on agenda topics to be heard and considered. This is not the time or place to register complaints about individuals or about items that have not been first addressed through proper channels, that is, with the closest to the issue, such as a teacher, a building principal, the superintendent, or another party. Individuals making statements during privilege of the floor are expected to be courteous and respectful, modeling for our students how one can participate and have their voice heard in situations where there is an agreement or disagreement with others' views. If members of the public have gone through proper channels and still wish to discuss a personnel matter with the board, they can submit their comments in writing to the board president, or they can request an executive session with the board. At its discretion, the board may invite visitors to its meetings to participate in the board's discussion of matters of the agenda. The Board of Education reserves the right to enter into executive session as specified in Policy 1720, executive sessions. The public comment section is an opportunity for residents and residents only to address the Board of Education. This public expression should take place only in the portion of the agenda designated. This is usually at the beginning of the meeting, and it is. Persons wishing to address the board shall indicate their desire to speak in advance in the sign-in, as we instructed earlier in the meeting. In order to give everyone who wishes ample opportunity to speak, speakers should confine their comments to 3 minutes. Francis will be timing for us today since we are virtual. The board will not address specific questions or comments, but may ask you for your name and address in the event follow-up is necessary. The board will not permit in public session discussion involving individual personnel or students. Persons wishing to discuss matters involving individual personnel or students should present their comments or concerns to the superintendent, who will share them with the board at the next executive session. And with that, we will go ahead and open. I am just going to go right down the list as indicated. The first member I note is, or member of the community I note is Deanna Fox. Deanna?
Thank you so much. So I just want to speak today on the proposed adoption of the diversity, equity, and inclusion paperwork policy that was put forth. And it came late. I think most people who are interested in speaking about it came to it late, were informed late that this was being voted on. And I'm just speaking as a proponent of the policy. The policy harms no one. There is no fact-based evidence that it is a harbinger or a euphemism for anything related to critical race theory or any kind of race theory. It helps students identify issues within the school culture. It helps them find respect for each other. And I think we could all do with more respect in this community. And it frees students just to learn how to advocate for themselves, to speak up for what they believe is right, to find their identity, find safety in a school where they might not find it otherwise. And I think that those tools would only allow them to foster those resources and carry them with them when they leave our school, help them advocate for themselves in all ways as they become young adults, adults in college, in their professional careers, and in their lives in general. The conversation and rhetoric that's incorrect, that critical race theory has anything to do with a DEI policy, is just factually wrong. There is no evidence that promotes that. there's no evidence that condones that. And I think beyond that, there are decades of social insight, research, and study that indicate that diversity, equity, and inclusion only benefit every single member of a community, especially in schools, as they are not exclusionary. That's the whole point of being inclusive. They do not exclude anyone. So I'm speaking for myself, and I'm sure many others, when I say that it is vitally important that our school adopt a clear, concise, and resolute policy when it comes to diversity, equity, and inclusion. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Next on the list is Sarah.
Good evening. My name is Sarah. I would like to just speak on behalf of almost 250 residents of Duanesburg that are not in support of the policy 3430, diversity, equity, and inclusion. I would say that a lot of us are very much in support of diversity and inclusion, but the equity is really the problem. It really should be equality. We're all equal. We should all have equal resources. Everything should be given to children equally, and some will need more things than others. That is understood. We're not against a child that needs more help be getting more help. So I just want to make that clear. I think that that's getting misunderstood quite a bit in this conversation. The fact that it doesn't seem that the school already is inclusive and supporting children to learn, I think is being overlooked also. I feel like those are already tools that are being given to the students at Duanesburg. Therefore, I feel like what is in support of diversity, equity, and inclusion, it almost seems redundant from the people that are proponents of it, because those things already seem to be in place. And as also not being in support of this policy, I would just like to remind the board that it is not mandated by the state, by the Board of Regents. I understand that it is encouraged and that they are giving support, but it is not mandated. And with a large majority of us residents against it, we'd ask that the board table this policy until we can actually have a conversation and talk together and come to a resolution on what this looks like, because this will change the culture of Duanesburg as a whole. So I appeal to the board to please give more time, because this seems to be a very divided topic, and it's not healthy for our community, for our school, for our students, for anybody involved in this. So my appeal to the board is to table voting on this policy, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah. Next, we have Avis Sanchez.
Yes, good evening. I'm going to piggyback off of Sarah, and I had spoken to, a majority of us had emailed each individual board member or the entire board about an executive session. And Deb Greer was kind enough to respond to a majority of us, and she suggested that we go to the Regent's office. So this morning I did contact the Regent's office by email, and a David Frank responded back to me. I asked him if DEI was considered mandatory, and if who has the authority to say yay or nay to this policy. And he advised me that it was up to the school board and it was not mandated by the state. That's all I had to say.
Thank you, Avis. Next on the list is Cliff Bradshaw. Cliff, I don't know if you're on mute. Am I the only one that cannot hear Mr. Bradshaw?
also
I can't
hear him.
either.
Okay. All right, Cliff, I will come back to you. We will go down. There's 2 additional folks that have indicated they'd like to speak. We'll start there, and then we will come back to you and see if you're able to connect. The next individual on the list is Mark.
Hello, good evening. Everyone can hear me?
Yes, we can, Mark. Thank you.
Okay. Hi, Mark Wasdowski. I'm from Duanesburg. I grew up, some of you guys know, my whole life here, almost 40 years now. And we're enduring these winters because I want to send my kids to Duanesburg like I went. It was a good experience, and we had fun with all the teachers. I do agree that we do need to make changes. I'm sure with everything going on, we need to change with the times. But to make a decision like this that's going to change the culture of our school and how we do things, I'm extremely heartfelt in saying we need to do a better job having the community as a whole able to be in person to discuss these matters. You guys did a great job with the students and figuring out how to have hundreds of kids in one building every single day and survive. There's no reason we all can't meet in the gymnasium and get this done in person. That being said, I am extremely against this and where it goes. We've researched ad nauseum the loopholes and the pathways through BOCES on what it means in depth, and it's going to break a lot of hearts if we have to pull our kids out of this school because of the pathways that you guys are at our mercy on deciding. So if we could just meet in person and come up with a plan on this, table it for now, that would be my request. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. Stephen?
Hello. I just have a couple questions. I don't know if you can answer them now, but I was curious, is this costing our community money to run this program? Is that something you guys can answer live now, or is that something?
No, we can follow up with the responses, but not on this during public comment.
Okay. Okay, that's one of my questions, what the cost is, and maybe we're getting aid and we could maybe use it in other places possibly. I just feel like our kids have lost a lot of time, and I feel like not only could it possibly, I guess I don't have the answer to that, is it costly or not financially, is also time. I feel like we should get back to basics right now. We should be working on tutoring, maybe if we have more time, instead of doing assemblies about, inclusion, where the last assembly, my son did not attend, but I heard a rumor that they were saying Merry Christmas was a microaggression to say that, and that they were saying not to say that. And I feel like that's not inclusion, that's exclusion. My family celebrates Christmas, so that's creating a wedge between us. So I don't agree with that. If that's what's occurring, I don't think that's inclusion. So at this time, I'm opposed to it as well. And I think the time could be better spent working on, learning math, reading and stuff like that, rather than wasting time on these things that are creating a wedge between the community and what we believe in, our values. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. I'm going to ask quickly, Larry, I did see you add. Cliff, are you available to speak?
Yeah. Hello?
Okay. Yep, we can hear you now.
Hi, I'm here. Sorry, I had to call in. I guess my microphone wasn't working on my computer. So I just want to talk about, first off, there's other people who've called in that would like to speak if you give them an opportunity. My name is Cliff Bradshaw. I'm concerned. My son went to an equity audit, equity assembly, and they told him to hyper-focus on microaggressions, micro-insults, which are unintentional discrimination. So my kid's going to school for math, science, English, and he goes to assembly that's teaching him to worry about unintentional discrimination on people, he's accidentally doing it or whatever. The assembly also told him he was biased. If this proposal 3430, diversity, equity, inclusion passes, that we will see this, maybe not in assembly, maybe it'll be more subtle because of the outcry, but we will see this be indoctrinating our children. It will be in everything that they do at school. We need to say no to this, and we do. And there's a huge, there's a movement. It's new, It's only been around for, since beginning of January. So this movement is say no to diversity, equity, inclusion policy 3430. And there's over 200, nearly 250 people who already have signed the petition that was presented to the board and will be presented to the superintendent against policy 3430 and the teaching of diversity, equity, inclusion. New York State Board of Regents policy statement on diversity, equity, inclusion in New York schools says, quote, we recognize that the decision to adopt a DEI policy as well as the contents of such policy are ultimately matters of local discretion. There is nothing forcing our small school to do this. This is a push by our superintendent. And I asked that the board represent me and the majority in the community and vote policy 3430 down. Also, let's see. And we talked about the petition that we sent to the board members. And we don't expect the school, the superintendent, the board members, we don't expect you to just, we want to help. There are issues in school. We're not saying school's perfect. We provided with you this morning, Board of Education members, a proposed draft policy 3430 impartiality in the district to counter this policy 3430 DEI policy. It better addresses partiality, bias, and discrimination with practical solutions that actually will work. Instead of trying to indoctrinate our children, it'll take them one base by base, each individual case at a time. So please bring up for vote the policy we presented to you, 3430 impartiality in the district. Okay? Thank you very much. Appreciate your support.
Thank you, Cliff. Larry O'Connor. Larry, I think you might be muted. No, he's not. We don't have audio on you. Jim, do you have a suggestion for Mr. O'Connor?
Just that, Mr. O'Connor, if you see the little microphone down in the bottom tray, is it red or is it gray? If it's red, if you could click on that. Yeah, we just can't hear you.
There's a telephone number, Mr. O'Connor, we can give you a minute, that's listed on the agenda. If you want to try to dial in so we can get your audio, we can give you a minute. Oh, Jim, do we have it handy? We can put it in the message.
Yep. Hold on.
Thank you, Joe.
While we're waiting, is there anyone else who wanted to make a public comment that has not written their name on the chat?
All right. Joe, if you're able to assist Mr. O'Connor, there is one additional person that added their name. So we'll go ahead and hear from Brooke. And Francis, if you can start the timer on that, and we will get back. Hopefully Mr. O'Connor will have better audio lock in.
It's working.
There you go. Okay, I think he's muted on the line now. Brooke, why don't we go ahead and hear from you? Brooke, are you there? All right, I don't hear Brooke. Mr. O'Connor, are you able to, do you have audio with us? He can hear us. Okay.
Okay, I'm unmuted.
I think if you mute, oh, there, I'll mute my mic.
Smart to tell it. Just step away from the computer. You get one on your phone.
Oh heavens.
Mr. O'Connor, I just muted you, but if you can turn down your speakers all the way and just use the audio on your phone, you should be okay. But you're going to have to unmute yourself again on your phone.
How's that?
That's perfect. No echo.
I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
Anyway, anyway, the thing was gray. I don't know why you couldn't hear me, but anyway, I live down the street from the high school. All 8 of my children have graduated from DCS. I don't have any children in the school right now. I guess we all lived through 2020 and saw all the cancel culture, saw all the hate, saw all the. I read Robin DiAngelo's White Fragility. I read Ta-Nehisi Coates. I know what equity means. Why are we using that word? I think that's really the problem that's got everybody upset because, the equity policy 3140 in and of itself doesn't sound that bad. What's equity? But if you unpack equity, it means white people are bad. It means we're oppressors and all that kind of stuff. And, I think that's to a large extent what people are reacting to. I just think it's really important, and I'm still a taxpayer in this town, and I do care about the future of our community. I think there are real problems in the town, in the school, and I've had the privilege of talking with Dr. Niedermeyer, and understand that there really are real problems in the school that do need to be addressed. But I think that encouraging people to offer respect and safe a safe space for everybody. And I don't mean safe space in the way they talk about it, but I mean just a neutral space where everybody can be welcome. I think that's really good. And there's a lot of things sound good, but I just think that we see our schools failing in America in a large extent, and it's very much the failure is really about class. It's not so much about race. It's about class. The suburban schools do great. The urban schools do terrible. And, us country schools were in the upper part of middle, I guess. But anyway, I guess I'd just like to say we really need to teach the children how to think, not what to think. And I think that you're just going to have a backlash from the kids. You think that, telling them something they're going to go out and do the opposite, So I appreciate the thoughtfulness and the time that Dr. Niedermeyer spent with me. I think there are things that we can have common ground about. I think you're looking at a lot of people who are sincerely religious and do care to share love with people that they meet. And I think we need to somehow find common ground. I do know one thing, that with this whole, I was in high school when Dr. Martin Luther King died. And in my high school, we literally cried when that happened. And I'm at least second generation anti-racist, and I hope my children and grandchildren are third and fourth generation anti-racist.
That's time, sir.
But sorry, bye-bye. Thank you for your time. Thanks, Francis.
Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to return to Brooke. And Brooke, are you able to get audio now? And we'll give it another minute and see. I don't know if you're able to dial in separately like Mr. O'Connor was, if that's successful an approach. Okay. I think we will move forward. Brooke, message us if the situation changes, and we can make an exception out of order as your name was listed in there. But at this time, outside of that, we will close public comment. Thank everybody for sharing your thoughts, your perspectives with the board. We appreciate hearing from the community. We are going to now move on to administrative reports. And I believe we have an update from elementary school science and math.
I'll introduce you, Melanie. So Melanie O'Neill was an elementary school teacher last year, and this year we transitioned her to a TOSA position, so a teacher on special assignment in charge of helping teachers kind of deal with all the technology that has rapidly become part of our lives in school. And so Melanie's been very successful in helping teachers get up to speed, but also Melanie's other role, which she had before and retains, is the chair of the elementary school science and math. And so Melanie's going to give us an update about what's happening in science and math in the elementary school. And Melanie, I didn't tell you this ahead of time, but I will tell you now that please feel free to tell us any challenges that you're having too. So, and then at the end, if you could just ask the board members if they have any questions, that'd be great. I will mute.
All right, thank you very much, Dr. Niedermeyer. Good evening, everyone. Is everyone able to see my screen? Okay.
Not yet.
I think it's just taking a little more time to load.
Is it loading, Melanie? I can always click for you. Oh, good.
I believe it's starting. I'll give it another moment or so, and then Dr. Niedermeyer, if you'd like to take the controls, I can just verbally flip through them.
I think this is you, so I think you can do it.
Yeah, we can see the screen now.
I can see it.
Oh, great. Okay.
Oh, Joe,
thank you.
Joe's presenting. Joe's presenting.
Oh, good. Okay, fantastic. Okay, so the core components tonight that I'm presenting to you are our K-5 curriculum for math and science in the elementary school. Our STEM department as a whole encompasses science, technology, and math. And this year, our focus has been on implementing our new curriculum, fact fluency and number sense, really taking a look at our common assessments, continuing our progress monitoring, and response to intervention. So, I apologize. So our new curriculum that we adopted this year is called Reveal Math. And Reveal Math was adopted by us after we formed a committee. And this was during the 2020-2021 school year. And not only did we meet as a committee as one grade level representation, teacher representation from kindergarten through fifth, we work closely with the department heads of the junior, senior high school teachers to make sure that our curriculum would closely align and help our students make the transition into our middle school math program. There's a lot of wonderful components of Reveal Math. It's standards-based, which was our highest priority. It shows major supporting and additional standards to prepare our students for the next grade level. It partners with NWEA, meaning the NWEA tests that occur 3 times a year at our school, and that helps teachers guide some of our instruction, is able to be viewed in the lens of our math curriculum focus on this platform, which is really informative to teachers. So we can see exactly how those detailed scores might line up and what the next steps would be. And within the program, there's various levels of rigor. There's some great online components. And we really focus at the elementary school to give support to every student. Our RTI teacher, Tracy Stryker, is doing a phenomenal job taking this curriculum and really making some great advances. So she is really working on the targeted interventions of the program. And you can see there some of the components of those targeted interventions listed. We have the course diagnostic, which just lets the teacher know, hey, where is the student starting at their understanding with this particular topic? And where do they need to be at the end of this chapter or unit? There is a math probe that will get the students thinking about the content that is to be delivered. And then the summative assessments are following all of the teacher instructions. The math language routine is where we incorporate our vocabulary into instruction, and then there's different levels of skill support. And it really helps the teachers focus on the standards that were introduced before that particular grade level and then what would come next. Something new that we're doing as a school that Tracy Stryker kind of piloted for us is benchmarking. And you might be familiar with some of our reading assessments that we do. Now we are doing some math assessments just to see, just to get an idea of the progression our students are making and how we can best support them as a whole. So we're looking at with these benchmarks, not to see really, exactly what the students can't do, but we're saying, hey, let's support their strengths. Let's focus on exactly where they are and how we can move them forward. And we are very goal-driven as a department. So inspired by Dr. Niedermeyer and his guidance, we set SMART goals as a department. And I think that's my warning bell. Okay. Last year, we focused on number sense, and we saw that students as a whole would benefit from consistency. So we developed a plan and focused on the future strategies of helping students develop greater number sense and fact fluency. This year, we're focusing more on word problems. And just in the interest of time, I'm going to summarize this a little quickly. We saw that based on some research, students might struggle with some word problems for various reasons, but they can apply some strategies and use problem-solving strategies to help them advance their understandings in a developmentally appropriate way. So we are also continuing our SMART goal from the 2021 school year. And this new fact fluency program is called First in Math, and it has many amazing components that are really engaging for students. And it's really engaging, thought-provoking, developmentally appropriate, and it really gets them focused on some 21st century skills. Now, moving quickly forward to science. As some of you may know, we've moved to new standards and curriculum with the next generation science standards. Some components of which are cross-cutting concepts, science and engineering, and some core ideas within each of the disciplines. And what's been fantastic for this year is our new science coach, Heidi Opperly. And she comes to us from BOCES for the entire district, and she has really helped guide our teachers into implementing these Smithsonian science kits in the classroom. And right now, each grade level, K through 5, is working with 2 Smithsonian science kits, and it's great hands-on, inquiry-based, exactly what science inquiry is heading towards in the classroom. And teachers are focusing on engineering, design, and life science and earth and space, and then bringing our physical science kits in for the next year. And these are just some of a quick snapshot of the current science kits that we have. Overall, as a department, we are making some good progress towards our goals, and we really have a great team of educators who are moving us forward. So I will stop sharing. And as I am, thank you very much.
Do any board members have any questions for Melanie?
Melanie, can you just give us an idea of the Smithsonian science kits and what those might look like? Maybe an example of one of them?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of those science kits would be, so how do we prevent soil from washing away would be a good example. That is a second grade science kit. And the students are actually given soil, of course, water, and some certain kits, and they have to plan and design almost like a dam structure so that they can really try to eliminate erosion or just prevent it from happening altogether. And then they might investigate what would happen if they see erosion taking place. And another kit could be how can we protect animals when their habitat changes? It really brings an all-inclusive look into this, into the world of animals. So the students don't just focus on, okay, let's memorize, the vocabulary. They're really getting a well-rounded view of animal habitats and ecosystems.
Hands-on generally generates a better outcome and a lot more engagement from kids. So I'm sure they're enjoying it.
It does. They really look forward to it, and they're really invested. It's been great to see it.
That's great. Thank you. Appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much.
The next item on our agenda is superintendent status update. Jim, do you have anything tonight?
No, I have no updates. I have sent like a flurry of COVID updates recently about different guidance that we've received. I think that as a result of a lot of the most recent guidance, we've pretty much seen the end of broad quarantining for right now. So really what we're doing right now is being much more surgical with who we're looking at as contacts and really restricting just to very close contacts. And even those folks we're allowing to do test to stay programs. So we should see very few, if any, quarantines going into the future. So just again, would like to thank the nurses for the work that they've done. I know that they feel like this is a humongous load off of them to kind of return back to more normal work. However, we are still seeing a good number of cases in the community. And so we expect that to continue for a little while, although the region already is seeing a decline in the number of cases. So we're very hopeful and optimistic that this could mean that we're reaching a more endemic phase of this virus that will allow us to kind of move on and live our lives.
No, I agree with you on that. Unfortunately, I recall saying the same thing around 10 months ago when numbers were declining last time. So I will try to remain a little more hopeful this time around. Right, moving on to the next item on our agenda is a budget workshop. I think, is Jeff presenting?
Yes. Are you able to get that going, Jeff? There we go.
Yeah, I think I got it.
So I can start a little bit, and then I'm going to turn it over to Jeff when we get to talking about numbers, because it makes him very nervous when I start talking about numbers. But just to start you on where we are with the budget, if you could go ahead and advance. So we know that we have a strategic plan that was rolled out last year, and the budget is really a very important part of that strategic plan because it funds all the initiatives that we have. So really the budget plays into each and every one of these different pieces to make sure that we can fulfill our mission of making sure that all kids get what they need to be able to fulfill their dreams for the future. So we are very optimistic that we'll be able to put forward a budget that allows them to do that and also allows us to reach the goals that are set forward in our strategic plan. So we do have some budget priorities this year. So we are going to continue to modernize our classrooms for distance instruction. So some of your kids and might already be in classrooms that have big giant monitors on the walls and also cameras and microphones. And so we started doing that last year to be able to kind of go on the transition on a dime to remote instruction. So we're going to continue to modernize our classrooms by, instead of replacing projectors, replacing them with interactive touch screens and systems that allow us to broadcast to wherever kids might be, because they might not always be in our school building. And so as frustrating as it sometimes is to deal with technology and all of the things around it, think about what it has allowed us to do during this pandemic. Now, what we're very hopeful in is that it'll be allow us to also participate more frequently with our distance learning network and surrounding schools. So we do have lots of teachers who are currently giving classes over the distance learning network in our distance learning room, but we're very hopeful that soon we'll be able to do that from anywhere in our school buildings. So we're going to continue to do that. We're also going to continue our one-to-one computing program. So again, essential during the pandemic, but now that students have, every student has a Chromebook and every teacher has a Chromebook, it really brings up a lot of opportunities for the kind of work that we can do with kids and the kind of level that they can participate in classes and be prepared for life outside of high school. So we're going to continue with that program. We're planning on maintaining all of our existing programs right now. We don't have any big cuts planned for anything, provided that our state aid comes in where we think it might come in. And we should find that out maybe tonight or tomorrow or definitely sometime soon, because the fiscal part of the governor's budget was presented today, and we usually get our budget runs shortly after that. We do know that we have some hurdles in terms of the amount that health insurance is increasing. So that's something that's definitely going to impact our district and something that we're planning for. We also really are aware of the dangers. So even though it's great to get federal stimulus funds, we also are very well aware that sometimes when this federal money runs out, it leaves a pretty big size hole in budgets. So we're very cognizant of the fact that we need to prepare for any potential fiscal cliff that we might have when that federal aid runs out. We are going to continue with our staff development initiative. So we've really done a lot in terms of the staff development offerings within our district over the last year or so, and plan to continue doing that. And one of those initiatives is also investing in the people that we have to build their capacity so that they can start to fill some of the positions that we are finding very difficult to fill. There just really isn't very many people certified in certain areas. And so unless we start growing our own and investing in their education to make sure that they can pick up other certifications, we're going to find ourselves with a lot of programs that we have to make unfortunate decisions about. So again, our challenge is health insurance rate increases. We know that every year our staff contractual costs rise. So we know that that's probably going to rise about 3% or so every year. We also know that our retirement system expenses increase every year. And we also know that our supplies and contractual expenses, those all get more expensive every year too.
I will say with the way that they reported the economy is increasing by like a 7% this year. Those contractual items and the supply costs are definitely things that we're going to be looking at during the budget this year. So some of our potential strategies for this budget will be, of course, to determine what the responsible tax levy is going to be, to consider the possibility of using that additional fund balance. So, and also using reserve fund to offset the possible budget gap. So I'll show you a little bit about the where we are with reserves, just kind of a refresher of where we are with our reserve fund report in a moment. And also just to consider all around what the current conditions are financially of our district. So, you know, we do have some federal funding that we are receiving, but that will end at some point. And we have to somehow continue the programs that we have started anew. So it's just a glance at the reserve fund report. We've shared this before. It's the same report that we've showed at a prior board meeting. Currently, the total reserves are at $6,194,897. The largest portion of that reserve is capital reserve, and what is potentially intended for that is to save the taxpayers in funding for the next largest capital project. So that will keep the district from having to borrow so much additional money to maintain our facilities and to upgrade instructional facilities. Also, so the rest of the reserves have kind of stayed pretty much steady. The one that we just updated at the end of the 21 school year, there was a little extra money that was added to the TRS retirement fund. The TRS retirement and the ERS retirement are those things that are going to be expected to increase over the next few years. So we may find that we actually do have to dig into those a little bit. So far, we've been okay, and we've been able to fund our budget with fund balance. But that's something that, you know, we do see in the near future with the current economy. So just a general makeup of what our district, how our district funds the expenditure budget is about 46 to 47% of the budget is made up of our state aid package, and then the other 46 to 47% is made up from real property taxes. So a majority of our revenues is made up entirely of state aid and real property taxes. So over the past, so for our district, this has been a trend for years, is that our state aid and our taxes stays about the same percentage, pretty close to the same percentage of how we fund our budget. And then the other larger portion is, of course, that savings, that fund balance that we're able to pack back into the budget as a just in case we have to dig into it. So this is a look at our tax levy history over the past few years. We have not exceeded the tax cap. This district has has been on a very good pathway of making sure that we do the best we can with our tax levy to not exceed that tax cap. So the past couple of years, actually, for the 2021 school year and the 21-22 school year, we had tax caps that were quite significantly. They were very high. So you had the 5.11% in the 2021 school year and the 4.45% tax cap, where both of those years we went out with a 1.9 and then a 1.95 for both of those years. So, and then the graphic here on the right-hand side is just a look at what a $100,000 house would look like. If you live in a $300,000 house, you would just be able to multiply those numbers by 3. And then that's kind of a look, just an example. This is for estimates only, but this is kind of like what your taxes would actually look like on a 1% tax increase. So about $18 is what you're looking at for an increase on a 1% tax if your house is assessed at $100,000. Just an overall look at our expenditures. So the past 5 years, I pulled a data from NICED. So this goes up to the year 2020. So looking back, just in that year, that 19-20 school year, we did have per pupil expenditures that were a little bit higher than our county average, but were still pretty low compared to the statewide average. But then looking at the 5-year average, we did very well with staying below the county average. So looking at those counties, the other schools in the county, the other districts, we did stay below what their per pupil expenditures were, and then significantly lower from compared to the statewide average. So
just if I could piggyback on that, so it's very rare to see a school of our size have a per pupil rate that is competitive with all the other schools in a county where all the other schools are larger than us significantly. And so we offer a really well-rounded education with a lot of offerings for kids at a cost that is comparatively a comparative value. So if you look on our website at some point, if you're interested in this kind of thing, we have a ClearGov portion of our website that'll actually show you what our per pupil rate is compared to other schools of comparable size and wealth. And what it'll show you is that we are absolutely at the bottom of schools' per pupil expenses of our size and wealth. So we're getting a lot of value for our money. So I think that that's really important to continue on.
it's just a look at the state aid for the 2021 school year and the 21-22 school year. So the current year. So you can see we have been fortunate that we've seen that foundation aid increase over the past few years, but that was last year, from last year to this year. The year before that, the foundation aid actually had stayed at the same value. But with the budget changes last year, we were fortunate enough to receive that foundation aid. Some of the big jumps that you see in the state aid, in the overall state aid, come from building aid. In that, after that 17-18 school year, that was when we had completed that capital project. So we had debt service that came on, and then with that debt service also comes the additional state aid that comes from the state to fund your building projects. So that's why you get that significant increase to the 18-19 school year from 17-18. So we don't have our state aid runs yet, as Dr. Niedermeyer said, but we're anxiously awaiting those. I always wait for those, and it never fails. It always comes out late at night, but we got our fingers crossed. So an overall look at our expenditures compared to our overall expenditure budget. So this district has been responsible at making sure that our expenditures don't go over what we budget for. So the past few years, I will say that because of the pandemic, we had some some expenditures that actually the percentage of our budget we actually had decreased because we had planned for the worst, and then the state came through with additional aids, and then there were also operational costs in that 1920 school year that were reduced. Field trips have not been fully reintroduced, so some of the travel costs that we saw, some of the additional expenditures when school is in full swing are just some of those things that we're seeing to make that trend go down a little bit. So anticipating that line to increase a little bit more over the next few years. In fact, with the economy the way it is, we know that those expenses will go up as things come back together. We know that the opportunities for kids is going to cost us a little bit, but to make it worth it, we're going to have to adjust the expenditure budget and know that that's coming. Just another look at where the expenditures versus the actual revenue. So we've stayed, again, very similar to the last slide, but keeping our expenditures lower than our revenues. So looking forward to the 22-23 school year, we have to be creative about some of those contractual items and expenses that in order to keep this trend going. So you see over the past few years, several years, this is our budget pass rate. Last year we had a pass rate of 77%. So it does help to get the voters out and to vote for our school budget. So don't forget to vote in May. And this is our tentative budget planning schedule.
So just to kind of take you through some of the dates. So we're doing just a rough overview. And so the next time that we meet, we're going to be talking about general support in athletics and technology, extracurriculars, those items. And then we'll also talk about the tax cap. And we should have pretty full information at that point about what our initial budget run is. Of course, like the budget run is never totally locked in place until the budget's approved, but we're optimistic that it being an election year, the budget run will probably be pretty close to what the final one house ends up being. Then we'll do kind of department by department. We'll talk about operations things, and then we'll talk about some debt service and employee benefits, and then we'll talk about our instructional budget and our BOCES budget and special education, and some more about state aid. On the 12th of April, we'll be having our community budget presentation. So at that point, we'll have the entire budget ready to present to the community. And at that point, people will have an opportunity to see that and to ask questions. We also have scheduled our public hearing on May 3rd. And then finally, our budget vote will be on May 17th this year. So just one last thing to think about as we're waiting for our state aid rollouts to come in. So like I said, I do expect that probably we're going to see an increase in state aid just because it is an election year and that's what usually happens. I'll also say, though, that one thing that could be a factor is the fact that the state has promised, they've settled a lawsuit to fully fund foundation aid. A lot of schools have not been getting their full allotment of foundation aid for quite some time. I think ever since that formula has existed. That's our foundation aid is our biggest pot of state aid. And so many schools around us, a lot of suburban schools and urban schools are going to be seeing pretty significant increases in aid. We are not expected to see as significant increase in state aid because we've actually been overfunded during the entire time that these schools have been underfunded. And so the prediction is that our state aid would be relatively flat for the foreseeable future. I think that probably will have a bit of an increase this year, and then we may go flat after that. But just so that you have that in the back of your mind, that the indication right now, unless state aid formulas change, is that we might be having some hard decisions to make, maybe not next year, but like in the future, just in terms of how we're going to make up that revenue, or whether we're going to make up that loss of revenue with some cuts. So just keep that in the back of your mind. I don't like to be overly pessimistic before numbers come out, but just know that that foundation aid formula is definitely a factor.
Thank you, Jim, and thank you, Jeff, for the presentation. Appreciate the level of depth we had on the budget last year, and it looks like we are heading in the same direction for this year, so that's very appreciated. Are there any questions from board members regarding the presentation? Okay, we will move on to presentation and approval of prior Board of Education meeting minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the meeting minutes from the January 4th, 2022 meeting as submitted. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Do I have a second? Thank you, Diane.
I'll second.
Thank you, Melissa. Any comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? And any abstentions? Okay, moving on to new business Board of Education standing committees. I'm aware the Education Committee met earlier today. I don't know if there's anyone else. So Teresa, we can start with you.
Sure. We met tonight before this meeting. We discussed several things. We discussed music offerings and participation, just kind of keeping an eye on things and how many are participating, trying to do some comparing and contrasting before COVID, during COVID, and what we're projecting for the future. We discussed subject-specific presentations, like we had one this evening that was wonderful. Thank you for presenting, and just wanting to continue that and just kind of doing some reflection and comparison, because that's not how we had been doing it in the past. Principals had mostly been presenting for their buildings as opposed to specific disciplines. So I think we are going to stick with that. We talked a little bit about just teacher retention, and I think that was touched upon in the budget presentation tonight, about making sure that we keep programming and keeping teachers here. And I think it was also mentioned, like sort of like grow your own. That would be really nice to keep, even more, and keep our programs strong. And then just kind of checking in to see how the middle school programming was going. And it sounds like everyone's still working really, really hard to make that program even more of a success. And we do not have another meeting planned at this time, but I'm sure we'll meet again soon.
Thank you, Teresa. Any other committee meetings since we last met? All right. Sounds good. We will move on to financial. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the claims auditor's comments on General Warrant A23 dated January 4th, 2022 in the amount of $190,974.09, and A22 dated January 6th, 2022 in the amount of $321,428.58. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
I think I heard Shane. Who was the second?
I second it.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Any questions or comments from the board? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, moving on to other. Approved policy. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve policy 3430, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the district as recommended by the superintendent. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Teresa. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Francis. I know we can have questions and comments from the board. I personally would like to start. I would like an opportunity to share my perspective on the policy. We've had an opportunity to hear from community members over the course of the past weeks. Important to note that the work here didn't just start a couple weeks ago. we put forth some strategic goals and a mission back in December, I think, of 2020. The areas that we're talking about in this policy were included in that at that time and have continued to be a focus of the board and of the district. So I have it typed up. So bear with me if I sound a little mechanical, but this is important for me to stay. So we have put forth a policy that articulates our responsibility in creating and maintaining an educational space where all students can be successful. I have researched, listened to, and read the feedback and input from the community members informing my position. I believe the following to be true. People have differences. Neither equality nor equity is achieved by pretending this is not a fact. Not talking about something doesn't make it go away. It is the responsibility of our school to provide for all students, to meet them at their individual circumstances and need level, and from there ensure the support drives them forward to success. Equity means recognizing that we do not all start from the same place and that we must acknowledge and make adjustments to imbalances. I also feel it imperative to bring forward a few clarifying points to what I feel might have been confusing or misleading information. So this is not a policy of critical race theory. There was an online petition that I saw that kind of referenced the title of the policy to include critical race theory. That is not, this is not critical race theory, nor is it an undermined attempt to bring any such curriculum to Duanesburg. Nor, as in the in-person petition suggests, is our intention to limit the successes or opportunities of any students or create any kind of cap or ceiling in the student's opportunity to achieve. Completely opposite of what is suggested, there is no intent to lower academic standards, hold any child back from their potential. The objective of this policy is for all children to be supported in their efforts to reach their own individual greatest level of achievement. To that end, Teresa, I would like to, actually Melissa, I would like to ask the board to consider an addition to the policy in the curriculum and instructional practices section, extending the current sentence to say, quote, ensuring that all students will be supported to achieve their fullest potential. So what this section, if you guys look on page 2 under the curriculum and instruction, that section could now read, if agreed as amended, the superintendent or designees will ensure that curriculum and instructional practices reflect the board's commitment to educational policy, ensuring that all students will be supported to achieve their fullest potential. I can, when I'm done with my statement, I can put that into the comments so everybody can see that. When I ran for the board, I'm in my 6th year. When I ran for the board, I asked the community to trust me. I wasn't seeking fame, and I certainly wasn't seeking a personal agenda. I am a parent of 5 DCS children spanning a wide variety of skills, abilities, and interests. Above all, I have their best interests in mind. To think that community members believe I would do something that would bring detriment to my own children is very hard for me to wrap my head around. My vote tonight on the DEI policy as amended is in support of my commitment not only to my own children, but to the children of our community, so that they may all have the support they need in achieving their goals, whatever their goals may be. Thank you, guys. Any other board members have any questions or comments they'd like to share?
I'll speak. I came to the district in 1990. I graduated in 1997. I moved back to the district in 2002 and have lived here as a taxpayer up to 2015 when my children started going. I understand Duanesburg's tradition and history and everything about this district that's great. And I also know that not every student that goes through those halls starts at the same place, as been stated. Everybody is dealing with their own setbacks and difficulties. I am awful glad that the traditions of Duanesburg have been there to support many of those students. Not all of them, but many of them. And I'm talking at the level even of the kid can't afford to go on a field trip. So fortunately, the PTA or the DEF or some other organization is there to help them. There's nothing holding the school responsible to make sure that every student has the opportunity to take part in everything should they so choose. There's nothing currently written. It's all based on tradition, and tradition changes with the people. This will document those traditions that everybody gets a fair shot. Of course, there'll still be tryouts and there'll still be academic requirements to be an AP, and there'll still be all of those things. But this will guarantee that the school district is a player in making sure that every student going into and coming out of Duanesburg has had a fair shot at being everything they can be. Just like I did, and just like many of my friends did, whether or not they had help, and hopefully my children.
Thank you, Francis. Any other members of the board would like to speak? Melissa?
Yes, thanks, Deb. I just wanted to say I feel strongly that approaching education in a way that fosters respect and understanding is the right thing to do. I think ensuring equitable access to education creates the kind of learning environment that we want, a welcoming learning environment. It teaches not only tolerance of others, but acceptance of individuals for who they are, what they contribute to our community and our world. Inclusive environments are collaborative, they're supportive, and they're respectful. And that's what I want in our schools here in Duanesburg. And these values reach far beyond our community. Our students are already global consumers. They have connections that span the world. They are interacting with people that are very much diverse from what we have right here in our own community. Our district's mission outlines that we intend to be a socially responsible school community, and I believe in my heart that this policy aligns with that mission. And I would also ask that community members understand that policies are living entities and they provide us with guidance, as Francis just pointed out, holding us accountable to create the most effective environment for our entire educational community. And the ways in which policies are procedurally implemented are going to evolve over time in response to the needs of our educational community. That's what I wanted to say. Thanks.
Thank you, Melissa. Any other members of the board wish to speak?
I can share. Mine is short and sweet. I just, I've read and reread the policy. I've set it down. I've gone back to it. We received some alternative options. I read that. I set it down. I reread it. I'm very methodical. But I just really, I kept going back to our mission statement, which I'll read. To provide all students of every ability the support, dedication, quality instruction, and experiences they need as they strive to fulfill their dreams and aspirations for the future. This policy supports that goal, and I support that policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Teresa. Anyone else?
I'd like to say a few things. I wrote them down because otherwise I would probably forget some of the points I want to touch on. Since the diversity, equity, and inclusion in the district policy was proposed in December, it has undergone significant modification as a result of public comments. While we continue to receive comments on the policy, I'm not sure we're receiving any new content in these comments. I'm not saying that the recent comments aren't valid, just that I believe we've already heard them and taken them into consideration in this latest draft of the DEI policy. Based on that, I'm comfortable going forward with a vote on the policy tonight. While I respect all the polite commenters, I have to say I do not agree with all of the comments. And I would like to mention a couple of points which seem to be at the core of the comments we've received in opposition to the policy. The first is, some people have expressed opposition to critical race theory and say that the proposed DEI policy is just another name for CRT. I don't see it that way. I'm convinced they're different. Just on the surface, it is clear to me that our policy is not CRT, as it addresses several issues that have nothing to do with CRT, such as socioeconomic status, gender, disability, neurodiversity, religion, and weight, to name a few. The second point is, some people are concerned that equity promotes equality of outcome, which could hold back some high-performing students. This is an understandable concern, as there are different definitions of equity floating out there on the internet. However, in our case, our proposed policy defines what education equity means for our school. Our policy is about equal access to opportunities and not about equal outcomes. Ultimately, each student will have a different outcome. And I think it's important to note that the school has done a lot to offer challenging classes for high-performing standards. Take our partnership with Schenectady Community College, for example. You know, so we're not just talking the talk. I think we're walking the walk. In summary, I support the proposed policy, and I also want to state my continued support for the superintendent. I think he's doing a great job, and we're very fortunate to have him in charge of our schools. And that's it for me.
Thank you, Shane. Any other board members have comments? Okay, I will ask whether or not related to the proposed amendment that is in the chat. If that is, I would like to proceed with the vote as amended, is if that is amenable to the board. Celeste, do you have that documented?
I don't have it documented, but I can get it.
I grabbed it.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Jim. Okay, if we have no more questions or comments from the board, I will open the vote. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay. Moving on to approve CSE minutes. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the recommendation of the CSE meetings and their minutes from January 4th, 5th, 10th, and 11th, 2022 meetings as submitted. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
I'll second.
Okay, thank you, Melissa. Thank you, Teresa. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on to personnel, accept coach resignation, B. Jenkins. Recommendation that the Board of Education accept the resignation of Ben Jenkins, modified baseball coach, effective January 3rd, 2022. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
All right, I got Diane. Shane, would you second?
Sure.
All right, thank you. Any questions or comments?
I have a question.
Just a comment that this only relates.
Go ahead, Melissa.
Oh, sorry, Jim. No, I was just wondering if we have an idea of what will happen instead.
Oh, so we'll post the position, and I would guess that we'll find a new coach. Just wanted to reassure everybody that this is just for the ECA position, that Mr. Jenkins is still with us as a science teacher.
Okay.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions? All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, I'm just pulling up the amendment on my phone. Sorry. So we will move on to approve appointments. Recommendation that the Board of Education approve the following substitute appointments as recommended by the superintendent. All appointments are employees at will, and the appointment at this time does not guarantee employment for the entire school term or year. We have Taylor Grabo, Amanda Steiberg, and I believe Melissa Neppy, if I'm saying that correctly. Do I have a motion? Oh, Jim, did you have? Okay. Diane and Francis, will you second?
Sure.
All right. Any comments or questions?
I know the one is Stigberg.
Well, thank you. You all know my track record for pronunciations of names. So.
I think that there's another item on the agenda, Deb, for Melissa Nepple.
No. Yeah, I added her when I said the names.
Okay, so we can skip that one that's below. She's separate, is all I'm saying. She's separate on the agenda. So I just wanted to point
Celeste, do you want me to do it separately, or was that fine as done?
That will be fine. I'll combine them.
Okay, thank you. Good catch, Lisa. Thank you. All right, if no other questions or comments, all those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Moving on, approve appointment T. Gordon. Be it resolved that the Board of Education of the Duanesburg Central School District hereby accepts the recommendations of the superintendent and assistant superintendent of management services to appoint Thomas Gordon, head automotive mechanic, effective January 31st, 2022, with probationary term of January 31st, 2022 through January 31st, 2023. Do I have a motion?
I'll motion.
Thank you, Tony. Second. I think that, who was that? Shane?
Yep.
Okay, thanks, Shane. Any questions or comments? All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Any abstentions? All right, we have an informational item on the agenda, the National Center on Rural Education Research Networks. Jim, do you have anything to share on that?
Yeah, I'm super excited about this initiative. So this is an organization that is out of Harvard, and they do studies on rural schools specifically, and suggest they do a deep dive into our data and suggest different strategies that we can use to try to improve certain things in our school. Right now, they're focused on making sure that kids can get into post-secondary institutions and that they're retained in post-secondary institutions. They've done a lot of different initiatives in past years. I know for a while they were working on student attendance. Bern Knox is also involved in this, and I believe Schoharie is also applying. I'm really excited because everybody has nothing but good things to say about the partnership of this organization. And best of all, it doesn't cost us anything other than to send some folks to some convenings because it's all grant funded.
Excellent, thank you. Okay, at this time, I am looking for a motion to move into executive session to discuss collective bargaining negotiations. The board does not intend to return to the regular meeting to conduct any further business. Do I have a motion? Oh, excuse me, at 7:55 p.m., Celeste.
I'll motion.
Thank you, Shane. Diane, I think I saw your hand up. Will you second?
Sure.
Okay, thank you. All those in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, board, we will leave this link, and I believe there was a separate link provided in your email for executive session.